breathing fire, so I don't want to be too close.
Well, I don't ever spit on.
Alrighty, so I'm going to, okay.
Still on the 7 eyes.
So I'm going to start with a video and prayer first, just to kind of
Sit next to me,
get
Sven.
us going with this.
I'm drinking coffee.
I'm a little bit nervous to be sharing today, just because it's going to be weird. But I'm very excited because I believe the stuff I'm going to be sharing today is very important for understanding our call as who we are and the biblical storyline from beginning to end. So, was I going to pray first or show the video first? Okay. Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for this opportunity that I get to share with these people what you have been teaching me. And Father, I just pray that we would all have open ears to hear, Father, what you are saying, that if anything that I'm presenting today makes us want to put up our defenses because it sounds very different than what we've grown up with. Father, I pray that everything that is from you would get through, that we would be open to hearing your voice, even though it's different, Father. So I just pray, God, that you would help us to hear your voice, Father, to see your face. I pray that you would give us a spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of you, Father, and that everything that I speak today would be all for the edification of everybody here, including myself, Father, unto the glory of your name.
Yes.
And the glorification of your Son, and understanding what you are doing to accomplish the restoration of all things, Father. So we just ask that your Spirit would be present, would be moving, Father. We want to know you more. We want to know you fully, truly, Father, and we just ask that you would help us with that. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm just going to start with a quick couple-minute video just to get started, and then we'll go from there.
Impose our own customs, our own culture, our own agendas, our own issues on the biblical text and demand that it address our situation. It's addressed to an ancient culture, in an ancient language, in an ancient time. And we need to make sure that we are entering that world instead of dragging the text as if it were talking to our world and in our terms. The message transcends the culture, but the form is culture bound. And so we have to recognize then that we are reading the text as outsiders. And the text represents an insider communication. That means if we're going to get the full focus of God's revelation to us and get the full force of its authority, we have to try to take our place in that audience and try to hear it as that audience would have heard it. That's the way that we are going to get the authority of God's text.
Okay, so did that video kind of make sense what he was saying, everybody? Okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna again preface this that what I'm gonna say to you today is gonna sound strange probably to a lot of you, and it did to me. You know, it's just whenever you hear something new and strange, it's always something different than we've learning from our culture, and it's different or opposed to that. There's a tendency to want to be like, whoa, what are you saying? Like, what are you thinking? So I just, again, want to encourage you to just hear what I have to say. Don't pick up the rocks to stone me, please. And just, hear me out, because I'm really excited to share this today, because I think it has huge ramifications for understanding, again, who we are as God's image bearers and the storyline of where the whole Bible from beginning to end. And yeah, I wouldn't be sharing this unless I thought it was important, because it's so weird. So, okay, so with the video that I just showed, he's just highlighting the importance that it is to get into the cultural river, or read the Bible through the cultural lens that it was written. Because an example is, I've heard people say before, the Gospels or Jesus doesn't explicitly say that he's God. Okay, that's us in our Western culture looking at it through our lenses. But when we understand how to read it, and in that culture and what Jesus was saying, what those sayings meant in that culture, he was screaming who he was. It is everywhere. Okay, so that is just an example of, we can't impose our modern Western understanding of things, onto the Bible, because it gives us a completely different meaning of what the Bible is actually claiming. So, okay, so I'm going to start with the beginning the beginning sort of. Genesis, creation, material versus functional. So, as an example, what arrow do I press?
The page on the right-hand
Page
side,
down?
page up and down goes
Okay.
back and forth. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to ask you guys, how would you describe a cow?
Dirty.
Okay.
Trouble.
Okay, like if you're trying to describe maybe to someone who's never seen a cow, like what are some things that you would say?
4 legs.
Gives milk.
Okay.
Chews all the time.
Okay. So here's an example. So a lot of us would describe it's spotted, black and white, or whatever color. It's a large animal. It's big, size, features. It has horns and an udder. I mean, if it's a female, obviously. So in the ancient Near East, it would be described by its function. Okay, so it would be more important that it gives milk, it gives meat, it plows the field, and it eats grass. So more its functional properties. In the ancient Near East, something didn't really exist until it had a function in an ordered world. Okay, so so bara, the word bara, to create, is a good way to translate it, is more assigning function. And an example verse of that, someone want to read Psalm 51:10, and then also Isaiah 65:18. Scott, can you bring some water, please?
Sure. Psalm 51:10 and Isaiah 65:18.
Creating me a clean heart, for Psalm 51:10. Creating me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me.
Okay, so with that one, it's not saying create a new material heart, right? It's saying assign my heart a new function of having, a clean heart, pure, being pure, right? It's like he already had his heart, he already had these faculties, but he's saying to redirect or to assign a new function. Okay, so does someone have Isaiah 65:18? Okay.
But be glad and rejoice forever. From what I have made, for behold, I am creating Jerusalem, rejoicing in the people.
So there, I'm creating Jerusalem, right, for rejoicing. Jerusalem was already there, right? He's not going to recreate the material Jerusalem. It's about reassigning or giving it a new function to be a city of rejoicing, right? So does that make sense so far? Okay, so creation. The ancient Near East, the time that the Bible was written in, it was written from authors who had the belief, and they were in the cultural river where existence came from having a function assigned. So, with the 7 days of creation, it talks about the plants being for food. It talks about the sun and the moon being for day and night and times and seasons. It's concerned with functions, okay? And again, I'm not saying that God didn't create the material things, because he did, but in the beginning, The Genesis 1 is not concerned with material creation. It's concerned with God coming in and creating a function and order from chaos, okay? It's not concerned, because the biblical authors are not concerned with the material stuff like we are in our Western culture today. So again, when we come from our Western mindset and the material things are more important to us, we impose that on the text, right? And we think it's about material creation, but again, it's function. And so yeah, creation is God coming in and creating order from chaos. It's also a temple account, which is really cool because, okay, so just to give you some kind of verse or passages that kind of talk about the temple accounts being connected with the number 7. So in Exodus 40:19-32, we have the tabernacle being completed in 7 stages. In Leviticus 8:33-35, we have the priest's ordination is 7 days long. In 1 Kings 6:38, we have Solomon's temple construction in 7 years. 1 Kings 8:2 and verse 65, we have temple dedication during a 7-day feast. 1 Kings 8:31-53, we have Solomon's dedication speech is 7 petitions. And then also extra biblical resources. There's something called the cylinder. It talks about a 7-day temple dedication. And then the next one, Scott. And then the Ugaritic text, it also speaks of Baal completing his cosmic temple in 7 days. So here we see biblical sources where the temple dedication is linked to 7 days, 7 years, 7 petitions, right? And then we also see extra biblical. This is the ancient Near Eastern world that the Bible is written in. Okay, and this is making sense so far? Okay. Okay, so really, I want you guys, if you have a Bible, to turn to Jeremiah 4:23. Okay, so this is a really another really neat passage that shows that creation is more of a God bringing. It's more about God bringing order from chaos. In Jeremiah here we have a reversal of the creation account. Okay, so I looked on the earth and behold, it was without form and void, and to the heavens. And they had no light. I looked on the mountains, and behold, they were quaking, and all the hills moved to and fro. I looked, and behold, there was no man, and all the birds of the air had fled. I looked, and behold, the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins before the Lord, before his fierce anger. Okay, that without form and void, does that sound familiar? Does that sound like creation? Formless and void. Same words, tohu and bohu, okay? So those words. So here, did Israel here, did they go into a state of complete non-existence? Mm-hmm. Like did the people cease to exist materially?
No.
Right. So, it's better understood tohu, no, Scott, not this yet. Tohu and bohu. So Israel as a people, though they were scattered and this stuff happened, they were still materially there. Right? So this is showing that they went from a state of a functional society into a state of chaos and disorder and dysfunction. Okay? And this is really cool because it uses tohu and bohu like Genesis. It also talks about the light and no man and birds. Like it's totally creation language here. So that's something that's really cool to compare alongside the creation account. Okay, let me think here. Okay, and so when God created, after, at the end of every day, he said, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good, right? it's really cool because Jesus, when he's talking about the Sabbath in the New Testament, when, you know, the people are criticizing him for doing stuff on the Sabbath, what does he say? Is it not lawful to do good on the Sabbath, right? And so here, God saying it was good was not that it was perfect, because I'll get to that, but more that it had a function. He assigned a function that he wanted it to do. And so Jesus saying, is it not lawful to do good, healing people, restoring their function and restoring order from the chaos that has come due to man's sin. Okay, does that make sense? I thought that was so cool. Such a cool connection. Okay, and then, so on the seventh day, God rested. Now, does that rest mean like taking a nap? So David having rest from his enemies, what does that mean? What do you guys like? What?
Stop coming at us.
Peace.
Yeah, we're free.
Peace, yeah. So the land was subdued, enemies were subdued. Now he was able to have rest from his enemies, to sit on his throne. Actually, does someone want to read 2 Samuel 7:1 quickly?
And it came to pass when the king sat in his house, and the Lord had given him rest round about from all his enemies.
Okay, so he was able to sit on his throne because he had rest from his enemies. Everything was ordered, had a function. There was no chaos, right, from his enemies. So, there, God rested. So after he had given everything a function, after the 6 days of ordering things, everything was ordered, and he could begin to come and dwell and reign in this ordered system that he created, that he ordered. Okay, so
That seventh day actually was the day that everything worked.
right, everything was functioning the way
The way it's supposed to.
exactly.
Function the way it's
Yep.
supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let me just gather my thoughts here. Okay, so then man was created, it says in the image of God, but a better translation would be as the image of God, because I think we sometimes think, okay, like we have a brain and we can think like God, or, you know, we can feel like God, you know, those kinds of things. But where's that slide, Scott, with the animals and man being described as the same? Can you skip to that one? What? What? No. Really? Okay, so here. Animals and humans are flesh. Humans and animals have a nefesh, a spirit for both of them. And so here's just a list of showing that biologically we're kind of the same. So what does it mean to be created in the image of God? Okay? And I'm going to put before you that it's more of a status that he's called humans to. Okay? All humanity is created to be the image of God. Okay? And I've grown in my understanding more of this, and as I've grown, it's started to empower and to excite me to what it's the whole, you know, you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. And I feel like understanding this and who we were made as the image of God, it's not just a biology thing. It's not just that we have emotions like God, or it's that he has called us to something so crazy, and we do not know it. Like the large majority of the church don't know it, and it's horrible, because this is what God has called us to. And so this is why I'm so passionate to share it with you guys, even though some of this stuff just seems weird. Like, just stick with it.
Bring it.
Yeah. Look into it. Okay, so man created as the image of God. We were called for something great, and we have no idea. And I myself included, like I'm not pointing fingers at all, because I'm just as guilty. But God has been just graciously teaching myself this, my family this, and it's just super exciting. And I need to share it with you guys all, because this is all of us. Okay. Okay, so Ecclesiastes 3:18 there?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I said in my heart with regard to the children of man, that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, And man has no advantage over the beast for all his vanity. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and to dust all return. So there, it's like we're on the same level as animals in some respects, but God has called us to something amazing and high, a very high calling. Okay, so that term from dust, man being made from dust, what do other Bible verses talk about dust and man? Like when the Bible has verses that talk about man being dust, what does that mean? Or to returning to dust?
Means that he died.
Yeah, mortal. We're mortal, right? And so in Genesis, I know I've thought about this, and I think a lot of us think about it, that it's like, oh, God molded us from the dust of the earth, the clay, right? But I'm going to submit to you guys today that it means that we were made mortal, okay? And the tree of life, we had to have access to the tree of life in order to have immortality, okay? And so when Adam and Eve sinned and they were kicked out of the garden, what happened? They didn't have access, right? And Dwayne, I thought it was cool that you mentioned the tree of life, healing for the nations thing in Revelation, because having this understanding, it's like in Revelation, we're going to have access again to the tree of life, yes. And it's going to bring healing and life to the nations, right? We're going to have access to God's presence.
Tara?
Yep.
Sorry. I don't mean to distract, but in Genesis it talks about the snake, one of his curses, eating the dust all of his life. Do you have any kind of insight on that?
Yeah, I can send you videos.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't have this all 100% down pat, but it's more the curse of from what I understand is of crawling on your belly and all that is more of a, you're just being cast down low. You're gonna eat dust. You're just gonna be in a low place, like a humbling. So,
What
but
I feel
yeah.
about the dust actually is that you were part of the earth, like just the earth. There's the heavens and then there's the earth.
Right.
God wants us living in the heavenlies, but the earth is made of dust.
Well, exactly, and that's just like our whole planet is it fades away. Like everything dies. Like there's a whole right, and same with us. We are dust. But just the amazing thing I found just from realizing that I used to believe that God actually took the dust and formed us from the dust physically, where it's actually more likely saying that we're dust. He formed us from dust, saying he formed us mortal, right? Yeah, but not necessarily that he formed us like materially. It's more stating our mortality. Okay, so that was kind of mind-blowing to me because I always believed that like God created humans immortal right from the start. Okay, but then why would there need to, what the tree of life, right? Why?
Okay, so that means because he spoke animals into being, he actually spoke man into being, not picked them up from the
Right.
piece of dust off.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
you're saying.
and well, it doesn't say exactly how God created us, right? Like again, Genesis isn't
But it
concerned.
makes more sense to think that he created us.
Yeah, he created.
As opposed to picking us up from the dust and say,
Right. Yeah, it's just, and
Well,
again,
it says he uses the word formed. Like he formed man, as opposed to just. But I get what you're saying. I mean, the purpose of Genesis is not to tell us how he did it, but that he did it.
and the how is important to us in our culture,
Yeah.
and so that's why we read Genesis, and we get a totally different message than what Genesis is trying to say.
But actually,
right?
if you then that's really good insight, because if you follow the logical human layout of how Genesis is created, you basically have vegetation before you have a sun to support the vegetation.
Right. And in our minds, like, well, how's that work, right?
Yeah.
But it's, but God's assigning functions. It doesn't. It's not concerned
It's not
with
concerned,
chronological
yes,
order.
exactly.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
about the tree?
Yeah.
Like, he died on a tree.
Yes.
And then we eat from his body. It's like a total circle back.
Yeah, like
You know?
there's so much imagery and stuff in the Bible that is said that once we actually start getting into the cultural river that the Bible was written in, it's like explodes.
Yeah.
And like it's just like I said before with the Jesus not saying he's divine in the New Testament. It's like, what are you, like, he is screaming it. You just have to put on the right glasses to see it. So it's.
Well, and that's evident by the many times they picked up stones.
Oh,
to kill him.
exactly, totally.
I
Yeah.
think that Genesis already
like Western culture already has a problem with what Genesis says as it is, let alone.
Okay, that's a good point too. Like with the creation.
With gap theory and evolution.
Yep.
Because evolution is us saying how it happened.
Exactly, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Because there are so many kids that are going to school these days that are presented with evolution, and they're like, oh, this is as a fact. Well, yeah, evolution, but it's like it clashes with the creation, the creation model that we've learned, right? And a lot of kids lose their faith, right? Because like, well, if I'm kind of believing this evolution thing, then I must be not a believer anymore. And that's really sad because we've made a battle where there shouldn't be a battle.
Well, evolution, you have no function.
Okay, yeah,
You have no
yeah,
purpose.
okay,
That's why it's
yeah,
dangerous.
it is. At the same time, I've come to the point where, because have you ever heard about people who believe kind of God used evolution?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you
Okay,
can't-
yeah, gap theory.
But the problem with that. Sorry, I don't want to hijack.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, and I'm not saying I believe in evolution. Like I totally believe God created it, and I don't know how because the Bible isn't specifically say how He did it. I know He did, but I'm now at the place where if I came across a believer who thought that God did use evolution, it's like, okay, the Bible isn't making scientific claims, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, so if I'm not going to question your salvation, if you think maybe God did use evolution, okay? So just because the Bible isn't making specific material creation claims in Genesis. He did create it, definitely, but those aren't the claims. And there is a bit of an unnecessary war going on between evolution versus creation that doesn't need to be there because the Bible isn't concerned with material creation. Yeah. Yeah.
No, you already had to.
With Psalm 139, it said, "For you have possessed my reins, you have covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully, wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works that my soul knoweth well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth." So, what do you think about that last part? That I was made in secretly and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of
So
the earth.
what do you think it means?
The dust.
Okay, but we're not when a baby's growing in the womb, we're not physically made from dust in the womb.
No, I know that, but
Yeah.
it seems like he's bringing it back actually to the beginning.
Well, and if he is referring to the beginning, yeah, like it could be like we're made mortal. He is intricately involved in our formation, and as he is our material creator, but man is also dust, and we are mortal. So,
does Earth mean mortal?
Well, I guess you have to do a bit of word study on seeing if maybe they're the same words. I'm not sure, but if anybody is intrigued by this stuff or wants to know more, I will send you guys some really good videos that kind of.
Connected.
Yeah.
I don't want to sidetrack you.
Yeah.
Believing in evolution is also believing in the violation of the second law of physics, that things go from disorder to order. Fundamental law. If I taught in school that entropy is reversed or things go from disorder to order, as professor I'd be fired. Yet teach it to our children that's how the universe is created.
Right.
Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, no, totally. And no, I mean, evolution, whatever. Like, I don't believe in evolution. I'm just saying, now, if I do meet a believer who does think that maybe, like, we all have issues, we all have wrong thinking, and so I'm just saying now, the clash isn't there, because Genesis 1 isn't concerned with the material creation. It is important to know who created it, definitely, but if someone says, I believe that God used evolution, I'm not concerned for that. It's not a salvation issue to me.
So your point is, we need to find our function as believers.
Yep, so I'm getting there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're back on track.
Yes, so. Okay, so, where am I here? Alrighty, so Adam and Eve. So God created, after God brought function and order into the world, he created a garden, and he called Adam and Eve to come and be the priests in that garden. And he told them to, what?
Be fruitful and multiply.
Subdue the earth, be fruitful and multiply. So you have the world, you have the little Garden of Eden with God's presence where Adam and Eve walked with God, okay? So Adam and Eve were called to take that presence and that order and God's reign and light and spread it to the earth. Does that make sense? And that's...
And have dominion over.
Yep, dominion, exactly. And that's part of spreading God's rule and reign and order into the earth from the garden, from his presence. So, Adam and Eve lost that connection with God with the fall. I just wanted to say a quick side thing. The Hebrew word for serpent and seraphim are connected. So, I know I've said and I've heard people say, like, Adam and Eve weren't doing their job, they shouldn't have let the serpent in the garden in the first place, okay? But it doesn't necessarily mean it was just this sly snake. It could have been a seraphim type figure. It would have been normal to have conversations with these seraphim if this was God's space, right?
Well, he was an angel of light.
Yeah, and I know there's one translation that translates the serpent as shining one. So it wouldn't have been that weird to have conversations. So also in thinking of it that way, yeah, there's a little visual. In thinking of it that way,
They can fly? Are you
it's
kidding?
just keep in your mind that the
Bad
word
enough
for
they can fly on the ground now that they fly in the air.
no, the word for serpent and seraphim are connected. Okay, so
Seraph means what?
Seraph.
Seraph.
Like in
around the throne guardian.
in the wilderness,
Yeah.
the snakes were there. That word is seraph.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
explain
That's
Sarah.
very interesting.
do you want to explain it? No, it's like
It's just a Hebrew
okay,
word
like in
for-
Isaiah, I think, where it talks
in the
about
wilderness.
in Isaiah though, where it talks
It's-
about the
it's
winged,
scripture.
the shining ones, like the winged ones around the throne. That's
Right,
seraph.
right.
Okay,
That's
so
seraphim.
okay, so around the throne, right? So the words are connected for serpents and seraphs, and if this is God's holy space, and Adam and Eve are walking with God and interacting with God's space and human space, it's not abnormal that they would have been interacting with these other spiritual beings, right? So then, in Jewish thought, if you were to ask yourself or somebody else, like, why is the world the way it is today? What would you say? What's it because of? What happened? The fall, right? In Jewish thought, though, there were 3 rebellions, not just one. Okay, so and they were all human divine rebellions. Okay, so you have the fall, where you have the seraph, the serpent, and mankind, right? And then you have also in Genesis 6 with the sons of God coming to the daughters of women, of man, and creating these giants, right? So that was another rebellion. And then you have Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel, where the Tower of Babel is a ziggurat account, right? Yeah. They're trying to make something to have access to the gods, okay? So there's the 3rd rebellion in Jewish thought, is those 3 rebellions that really threw things for a loop. Let us make the name for ourselves. Yeah, so it was basically just trying to, the whole connection, the human and the rebellion. There's a human and divine thing going on here with these 3 rebellions. And Jesus addresses all 3 of these. Okay, just let me get back to my notes so I don't.
This is the fall of man, the days of Noah. What was the other one?
The fall of man, Genesis 6 and Genesis 11, Tower of Babel. Yeah. And I found it's really amazing too, like after each of these rebellions, God is so good and so faithful in giving a promise or hope after this. Okay, so with in Genesis 3, he says, your heel will strike, your seed will strike the serpent, right? Like he gives. It's like, this is not a good thing that happened, but there's coming a day, right, where it will be restored. And then in Noah's day, Noah comes out of the ark, right, and says, I will never again flood the earth, and et cetera, et cetera. And then also after the Tower of Babel is the account of Abraham, and Abraham bringing blessing to the nations. Okay, so it's really cool how just even in the midst of human rebellion, God is so faithful and so patient with us human beings who are called to be his image bearers. Okay, so let me see here.
where was I? Okay, so in the Tower of Babel rebellion, we see the divisions of nations, and there's a psalm that talks about the nations being divided according to the sons of God, or sons of man, or sons of Israel, sorry, but it's better translated as the nations were divided amongst the sons of God. So God, after he split, remember when he split the nations up into different languages after Babel, right? Because man's inclination of the heart was just evil, and there was nothing that was going to be impossible if they just kept going, right? So he split them up. And the people that he wanted to take, that he called into the status of being his image bearers. He's like, you know what, I'm just going to split you up into, and he put them under dominion of other gods. Okay, so, and I just want to say too that though I'm saying, yeah, I believe there are other gods and divine beings, Yahweh is still God, Lord Most High. Okay, and that phrase in the New Testament, Lord Most High, is used in reference when Jesus is dealing with the non-Israelites. It talks about the Lord Most High. So it's saying like he is the Lord of Lords, the ultimate. He's the one unique God above all gods, the creator of all these other divine beings. So the divisions of nations happened at Babel. And then what does God do after that? He calls Abraham. It's like he's restarting, right? So he's picking Abraham to be those image bearers. He's starting fresh, and through Abraham's seed, all the nations of the earth will be a blessing. So he's still working with us crazy human beings who's rebellious like, no one else. And he's still working with human beings to bring restoration and to restore that calling as being his image bearers. And this too, like with us being his imagers, his image bearers too, it's just really sad when, you see us too, and just even in Israel when they're making idols and they're bowing down to all these things that we were supposed to have dominion over as God's image bearers, right? Like it's just a total flip of the way things God had created them. So Eden was lost, but all throughout the Bible, when you see this concept of all throughout the Bible, you see the string of God like carrying this, God wanting to dwell with us again, right? Even the tree language, when Abraham, builds an altar under a tree, like that is designed to bring your mind back to Eden. It's designed to bring your mind back to Eden, because Eden was a garden, trees, it was lush. So every time you read like, this so-and-so built an altar under a tree, it's supposed to remind you of, oh, this is an little Eden scenario. And then you have the tabernacle, and you have the temple, and then you have Jesus coming, and he talks all the time about being the temple and, the dwelling place where God's presence resides now. And then you have us, like we're called into that, and where God's presence is now in us. Like that is just insane. And then Revelation, you see it culminate. Like the first two chapters of the Bible and the last two are about God's dwelling on the earth, right? And it's bookending. And it just, so you see this thread all throughout the Bible. It's like, like we relegate all these Bible stories to like just random Sunday school stories, but just seeing this specific thread tied all throughout the Bible, it just ties all the loose strands and makes things so clean, and just like God has a storyline here, and we are called as God's image bearers to join into that story. Okay, so the Great Commission. I believe the Great Commission is a parallel to God telling Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, okay, subduing the earth. And there was a belief or the thought in Jesus' time, after like with the growth of the early church, that multiplication, the focus of multiplication wasn't mostly biological, but spreading the gospel. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really cool. That's really cool to people who can't have kids, who might have thought that maybe my calling isn't fulfilled because I can't have kids because
Absolutely.
Genesis says we're supposed to be fruitful and multiply, right?
Yeah, that's not what it means.
Yeah, and so mothers and fathers aren't just biological. You don't fulfill your call just by being a biological parent. Like, you are called to be mothers and fathers, being fruitful and multiplying.
Yes.
By stepping up into our calling as an image bearer, as God's imager. We are, like, literally, like, Jesus, we talk about Jesus being the image, right? The image of God. But we fail to see we are called into that same thing.
Yes.
That is crazy. Yes, Jesus is Yahweh in the flesh. He is holier than us for sure, but he is our brother, and he is our example of showing us what we were created to do in the garden as God's imager. Like, guys, this is huge. Like, if we catch on to this, sorry if I'm going to cry, it's huge, and I'm getting very passionate, because as I realize that, we relegate the gospel to Jesus died for your sins so you could go to heaven. It's like, well, I'm just going to sit here twiddling my thumbs, sin management until I die and go to heaven. And play on a harp all the rest of my life on a cloud. Seriously, like, we have got to wake up to our calling as God's imagers. Like, this is huge, huge. And just the truth sets us free. And just, like, I'm not there yet, but just having this growing understanding in my head of, like, oh my goodness, like, the dignity that he gives us as human beings that we're called to, like, it's already starting to percolate and empower me to go out and do that. Just knowing, like, this is what we were created for. We're not just created to sit on the earth and just wait until we die.
Yeah, we're not victims.
No, like, serious.
Waiting for the rapture.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we have a job to do.
Yes.
And this is what we were called for. Like, the first song, Chris, that you did, you sang with Unveil Why We're Made, right? And also the other song where I am unfulfilled without communion, right? Like, we have a job to do. And we are responsible to, Jesus has made a way for us to come back to the Father so that we can have that communion that that Adam and Eve had with him in the garden, so that we can go out and subdue the earth and be his imagers. Show people who Jesus is. When they see us, that they will glorify the Father. It is huge. It's very huge. And again, yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's huge.
I know. And this is why I was a little nervous this morning to share, because some of it's just weird stuff that, a lot of us in our Western cult mindset don't think about. But I was so excited because I know the importance of people catching on to this will revolutionize how we do missions. How even, small business builders like Amy and Carissa, you're working on your, like, small business builders, like, even that, and going out and doing missions and taking care of foster kids, like, it all connects to that. And I was just saying to my sister today, like, because just recently I've started my own small business thing, and I was just saying,
I haven't heard.
Tell us about it.
maybe I should post more on Facebook. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. I was just saying, I didn't mentally connect the dots until this morning, but we've been kind of learning these things in the past couple months about this stuff, okay? And in the past couple months is when I felt a switch in me to where I was able to, instead of being a big dream killer, and just like, oh, what am I gonna do for the rest of my life? Like, I just feel like, I don't feel like I'm doing much. I don't feel like I can do much. To something all of a sudden just switched to me to where I'm running with something. Like, I'm like a different person. And I was just saying to Amy today, like, I didn't connect the dots, but we've been learning about this, as God's image bearers. Like, there's a good chance that learning this stuff helped me to step forward into my calling as a business builder. And I mean, for the kingdom. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the truth sets us free, and the truth, knowing the truth, it empowers us to take steps and to just do it. So I want to encourage everybody, whether you're called to missions or fostering or small business or anything, like focus on and learn about how we're to be the image of God, and it will empower you in what you are doing. It will, like, when we know who we are. And this also is why David, like, he was called a man after God's heart. Why do you think he was called a man after God's heart? He was very desirous to have God's temple and presence dwelling on the earth, right? Psalm 27 is a famous psalm. One thing I've desired of the Lord, that I will seek, right? That I may dwell in the house of the Lord. This was his life. Like, he got it. He knew that God was seeking to restore all things back to what it was in Eden. That he and we all have a part to play in doing this. That he is called to be his imagers and his light, and that his presence is dwelling in us now. Like, David got it, right? And so I believe, like, that's why he was called by God like a man after my own heart, or mind. The word actually there in Hebrew is more mind. Like, he was a man after God's thoughts and plans and where God wanted to take things. Okay, so I think I'm almost done, but okay, so the division of the nations at Babel. And then we see a reversal of that in Acts 2, right? Where the nations are coming, like God gives the tongues to go out to the nations and bring them back in. Okay, so it's a reversal. And in Revelation, what do we see around the throne? Every tribe and tongue and nation and people and language. Like, does that sound like the beginning with, like, all the people, all the people were there, dispersion, then he's bringing us all back around his throne. Like, this is where he's taking it, and we are literally in the storyline of this all taking place. We are in it. Like, it's not just something that's happening out there. Like, this, we are in the storyline. And so, yeah, let me think. Oh, and I just wanted to say, to tag on, the divine human rebellion. Okay, so there's a divine word. It's like Michael Heiser puts it this way, that there's God has a family, and it's made up of divine beings, and it's made up of human beings. There are rebellions between divine and human, and there are faithful divine human beings, okay? And so I just want to show just a couple examples of faithful divine human interactions for God. Is with Daniel, when he's praying, when he's doing his 21-day fast, right? An angel comes to him, right? And he says, sorry, I couldn't get here sooner. I was busy fighting the principality or whatever. And so that is just a good example there where Daniel's activity on the earth and divine activity in the heavens are coming together and are forwarding God's purposes, right? And then also I thought it was really cool how in Revelation, towards the end of the Revelation of Revelation, John bows down to the angel. And baby kicking. Excited about the topic. So John bows down to the angel, and the angel says what? Don't do it. Don't do it, right? Like, and that's where the serpent failed. Like, you know what I mean? The serpent failed, and the sons of God failed in Genesis 6. And so it was just, I just thought it was cool because God kind of pointed that out to me that, despite us seeing these human divine rebellions, there are also pictures in the scripture where it shows human and divine beings working together for God, for the furtherance of God's glory. And now I just want to bring something up too about predestination. Scott, is that verse up there? I don't know if that is. Just a second. No, I'll read it just a second.
Which one was it?
No, I don't think it's up there.
Okay. I can get
Ooh,
it.
I'm on. Okay, I'll find it here.
What verse?
I'm looking. Okay. 1 Samuel 23, 1-14. So I want to bring this up because
Sorry, what? 23.
23, 1-14. I want to bring this up to show that not every little detail of our life is predestined. No, seriously, it's not.
Amen.
Okay, so, well, actually, you know what? Someone else want to read that? Someone else can read that, if Bible or on here. 1-14.
Now they told David, "Look, the Philistines are fighting in Keilah, and they are raiding the threshing floors." So David inquired of Yahweh, saying, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" And Yahweh said to David, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Keilah?
Keilah, maybe?
What?
Keilah, maybe?
Keilah?
We'd have to look at the Hebrew. No, for sure.
Okay. But David's men said to him, "Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah, to the battle lines of the Philistines? So David again inquired of Yahweh, and Yahweh answered him and said, "Get up, go down to Keilah, for I am giving the Philistines into your hand." So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines. They drove off their livestock and dealt them a heavy blow. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. Y'all keep going.
14.
Now, when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, he went down with an ephod in his hand. When it was told to Saul that David had gone to Keilah, Saul said, "God has given him into my hand because he has shut himself in by going into a city with 2 barred gates." Saul then summoned all of the army for the battle, to go down to Keilah to lay a siege against David and his men. And when David learned that Saul was plotting evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring the ephod here." And David said, "O Yahweh, God of Israel, your servant has clearly heard that Saul is seeking to come to Keilah to destroy the city because of me.
Okay, now pay attention to this chunk.
Will the rulers of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Yahweh, God of Israel, please tell your servant." And Yahweh said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the rulers of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul?" And Yahweh said, "They will deliver you." So David and his men got up, about 600 men, and went out from Keilah and wandered wherever they could. When it was told to Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, he stopped his pursuit.
Good. So did you guys catch that? What just happened? Like, David asked God what would happen, and God said what? That he'd be given over to Saul. And then what happened? David ran away and he wasn't given to Saul. Like, this is a prime example right here of God saying something's going to happen, David doing something, taking action, and it's something else happening. Okay, now the implications of this for us are huge. Okay, so and I just want to summarize. My dad sent a really good summary of this. I just want to summarize it.
I can do a study just on this thing here.
Yeah, I know. It's so packed. So Michael Heiser is like, has so many good resources on this kind of stuff. And so his summary about predestination, it just says, the short version of all is this: all I'm really saying is that God foreknows all events, predestinates certain but not all events, and is not responsible for sin and evil. Okay? So yes, there are absolutely some events that are predestined and going to happen, like Jesus coming back. Yep.
Wouldn't this be a case of God telling David what would happen if he chose a certain point of action? Because like lots of time in Scripture, God says, if you don't do this, then this will happen, or if you do this, this will
But
happen.
that's, yeah, totally. And this is the whole crazy thing between God's foreknowledge of something and predestination, or like God knows everything that's going to happen. It doesn't mean it's predestined. So it's like, God knows if I have 3 different choices ahead of me, he knows the outcome of every single one of those choices. But it's not predestined. It's not like I'm forced to make a certain decision. You know what I mean?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, actually, we actually deal with this on a daily basis, like as humans, right? So, for instance, I can say to Sebastian or Caleb, okay, here's money, okay, for the teacher to get to the teacher in school. Now, put your money in your bag, because I know that if they don't put their money in the bag, number
Right.
one of 3 things are going to happen.
Right.
They're going to lose it.
Right.
Right? It's going to get taken from them.
Right.
Or whatever, it's going to be misplaced. And if they don't put it in, I know that's going to happen.
Yep.
Right? So they don't put it in, they end up losing their money. It's
Yep.
not that I made that happen. Right?
Yep.
I knew it was going to happen because I know the nature. And
Right.
so one of the things that it says about the sons of God, it says for those whom he foreknew, he did predestine. But the basis of that predestination is on his foreknowledge, but we don't know foreknowledge of what. It
Right.
doesn't say.
Right.
It just says that God knew something,
Right.
on the basis of that knowledge,
Yeah.
he predestined.
Right. And there are absolutely some things that are predestined and going to happen, right? And I know I've been guilty of this too, but just when it comes to the end times, about saying, kind of sloughing it off and saying, oh, well, things are going to get dark anyway, so I'm just going to sit back and let things happen. No. We, as God's image bearers, have been called
He's given us free will. He's given us dignity he wants us to partner with him, to commune with him, so that we can take dominion of the earth with his wisdom, not taken from the tree of life, knowledge of good and evil. But he's given that, and he loves the process. He loves our own personalities and our own choices and how we do things. And so it's not like if you had two decisions set in front of you, it's not like one's right and one's wrong necessarily. One might be, it depends on the situation, obviously. But, okay, like, example, and I'm not saying this because I'm not happy married to Scott, but no, when I was going through, when we were going through a bit of a tough time, kind of in between our marriage and engagement thing, you know about this, so stop it. I was just reading a book, and...
Why are you telling them this? I'm joking.
It's an example. I was reading a book called Love and Respect, and in there it talked about the whole soulmate thing being like a Greek mythological thing. Yeah. So it's just like, okay,
Doesn't exist.
God gives me the choice of who I want to marry. It's not like he necessarily, for some he might have people predestined, but he gives me the choice, hopefully based on my relationship with him and me getting wisdom from him, but he gives me the choice of who I want to marry. It's like, so, me thinking that, oh, should I marry Scott? Shouldn't I marry Scott? Like, am I going to miss the boat if I do? That kind of thing. It's like, it was so freeing to just realize that God values our opinions, and he values our personalities. He values our choices. And the biggest thing that he wants of us is to be in communion and relation with him. So whatever choice we do make, it will be a choice based off of his wisdom.
And he can work it.
He can work it, and it can look like different from person to person. It doesn't mean one choice is wrong and one choice is right. And again, in certain situations, obviously, like if you're questioning whether you kill someone or not, obviously the answer is don't kill them, right?
Aren't you born predestined? We're born. So the babies you make, come
Well,
from the
okay,
guy you got
yes,
chose,
yeah,
so,
but we also choose when we want to make the baby,
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, I was that close to not existing because the timing, you know what I mean? So, yeah, God obviously works those details out, and there is some predestination and God's involvement, absolutely, and foreknowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Einstein said either everything is ordered or everything is random.
Well, and that's the thing, like, we have the freedom of choice within that order. Like, just because we make one good decision instead of a different good decision doesn't mean it's disorder, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so it's the whole, there is a balance, and it is confusing. It's like, okay, well, God foreknows, so how is that not predestination? But just realizing that God does give us the dignity, and he wants us to make choices based off of who we are in him. Like, we're not just robots.
Right.
So here's a picture that I got, and I don't know if it's, vision that God gave me with creating children, is that there was, so just like the material, what you say, the material is not important.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So there was 10 vessels, women vessels, okay? That God, so where I think the predestination comes in is God knows who's he's going to create.
He foreknows.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how that
Yeah.
creation comes to be was this picture he gave me, and that was there was 10 women vessels.
Yeah.
Who, it was like there was a hole in their head to their body, and he put in the blessings of children into those that would receive the blessing, who would want to receive the blessing of children. Do you understand?
Right.
So it's not like, you're going to be assigned a certain number, this is the way it's going to go. It's rather, are we willing to be in God's hands and trust him
Yeah.
for children? Like, this
Right.
was the situation I was going through about trusting children.
Right.
And so he was showing me that if you are a vessel that's willing to receive my blessing, I will give you,
Right.
the blessing.
Right, yeah, totally. But at the same point in time, I wouldn't say that people who choose not to have kids or not to have a certain amount of kids aren't. Okay, like, for example, if someone can't have kids, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It's like they're not deprived of blessing, or if
No.
someone.
Well,
If-
he may bless them a different way.
Well, yeah, like it's just having kids isn't like the ultimate blessing. Yes, it
Or
is.
can have
No
spiritual
heartaches, yeah.
children.
Yeah, exactly,
Or
exactly,
can
and
have adopted
that's what I
children
wanted to
and
say,
have-
because a lot of unmarried people, or a lot of people who can't have kids, or a lot of people who choose not to have kids for the sake of the kingdom, or that kind of stuff, I think get looked down upon. Like, oh, you're not married, or oh, you don't have kids, or you can't know the father heart of God if you don't have real kids, that kind of
also,
thing.
it's better not to get married.
Exactly. So, and also, again, with like coming to the Great Commission and the early church view of reproduction, multiplying on the earth, it was more of a, yeah.
Can I throw something in the mixer?
Yeah.
He knew us before the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Before we were all.
Yeah.
For the foundation of
Before
the
the
earth.
foundation of the earth and the beginning of time.
Yep.
Well, anyway, but he knew us right before.
Yep.
So that means that we were meant to live.
It's
And okay. Oh wait.
Yeah.
No, can I just?
Yeah.
And he is eternal. He always was, always will be. Everything always the same. Never. Always was. I think we were always was, like, within him, because he knew us before the beginning of time. So.
okay. So getting on. Okay, then maybe if we don't. Yes. Yeah. I know.
Chucky's landing a plane.
I mean, what?
Crashing it.
Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that what changed for me with the predestination thing was that sometimes we would treat it like we're in this time warp, that if we want to do something, but we're not supposed to, no matter how hard we try, then it's just like we're always going to end up right back where we started. And so then then people would sometimes say, well, if I'm supposed to know something about God, he'll make me know it no matter what I do, right? So it takes that responsibility off of ourselves. And so when we kind of actually realize that we have a choice, and that our work does do something, that I will know certain things about God because I put the work in, and I miss out if I don't put the work in, that we're not stuck in this time warp where no matter what we do, like where if you don't work for Plexus or to make that happen, it's not going to
Exactly.
happen. Even if he called you or invited you to it, that it's
I have
we're
a
not
job to do.
stuck
Yeah.
in this time warp.
It's the Esther thing, I think. If I don't do it, someone else is going to come in your place.
I one more in the mix there. I saw Satan fall like lightning. I give you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions, overcome all the power of the enemy. If God gave us authority to fight Satan and nothing's going to harm us, then we actually have the responsibility to use the authority and power given to us. It's no longer a choice.
Yeah. And even just the whole, sitting and twiddling our thumbs until a door opens, or what I mean, that kind of stuff. It's like, no, we were created, and this is why I really want to tell you guys what I've been learning, because it's like huge that he's given us dignity to be his imagers, to be the subduers of the earth, to go out and be lights for him, to fill the earth with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord. And eventually, obviously, in Revelation, that's going to be completely fulfilled. But we have that calling and that incredible dignity that he has called. What?
Some Benji Nunez.
Yeah, okay.
Nunez's dream.
Okay, yeah.
If you can quickly.
Yep. So a guy we were listening to, he said he had a dream where he was sleeping and he got knocks on his door, and he woke up and he opened the door and it was two angels that came to escort him. It was in the kingdom, came to escort him, saying, Jesus has need of you in this council meeting. And so he's walking with these angels to the council hall or whatever it was, and then so he gets into the council hall, and Jesus is there around a table with a bunch of other people, and Benji Nunez is from Mexico, and so Jesus asked Benji, okay, so I would like your thoughts on what to do with Mexico. Like, how cool is that? Like, this is a perfect example. Like, we're designed in Revelation.
Why would Jesus even ask? Why wouldn't? And then Benji's answer could be like, well, you know what to do them. You do it.
Yeah.
You do it, Jesus. No, Jesus.
But
like,
he wants
our,
and in Revelation it talks about we're going to be ruling with him.
Well, we're co-laborers.
Yeah,
He wants a part of
totally. We're ruling with him. So, again, I'm going to say it again because it's important.
Who are you? Right?
Who are you? Who are we as God's, the sons of God? Okay, and I think the term even sons of God is like, that's a whole nother thing all in itself. But the terms, sons of God isn't just that he's our, nice little father and we're his cute little child. Like, it's more than that. Like, we can sometimes,
Not children of God, but sons of God.
Yeah, and we can sometimes lower our understanding based on our human understanding of what a son and a father is. But going all throughout the Bible, like you see the term sons of God, like, and it begins with the divine beings, and then it begins with Israel called the son of God, and then it comes Jesus is the son of God, and now we're the sons of God, right? And so that title is like jam-packed with meaning there too, and how we were called to be his image bearers. We are called to take dominion, to subdue the earth, to bring his glory onto the earth, like it was in Eden, to spread it out.
Yeah.
And we are all little Edens now because we have the Spirit of God dwelling within us. And yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, it's going to get fulfilled fully in Revelation. Yeah, I know. So even that, like, once we like get a hold of that, even it's like, can you imagine, like, the empowerment that just knowing this stuff, like, actually.
We're equipped, but if we don't put the parachute on, we're gonna die, right?
Yeah, and so,
Put it on.
and then this is also really important, not just for our understanding of who we are, but when it comes to sharing the gospel with other people. It's not just that Jesus died so you can go play a harp on a cloud. It's like Jesus died for you so that we could be restored back to him. We could walk with him, so that you, the people we're talking to about the gospel, you were created as God's image. You have a purpose and a calling and a destiny. I want to awaken you to that.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the power of the gospel would be restored with that too. Instead of just like, a lot of people are like, well, I like my life. Why do I want? Because even the understanding of heaven is so skewed and distorted, right? Like
Exactly.
the whole harp on the cloud thing. It's like, I'd like to party in hell instead, right? So when this is restored to the church, who we are as his imagers, and then it changes how we present the gospel to other people, because it's not just about Jesus dying for our sins and going to heaven. It's about being restored back to our calling as the sons of God, as his image bearers, as people, people who are supposed to, when people look at us, that they see him. Like, it's possible, he's called us to it, and it's going to happen. And it's going to happen. That's a predestined thing. His church is going to know this, but whether we become a part of it is up to us.
Yeah.
We have a choice. Yeah. So I think, sorry, it's 12:13, but I think that's all I wanted to say. And I think that's it. So if you guys are interested in maybe looking further into like all this stuff in ancient Near Eastern, just how it changes certain perspectives, how we read the Bible, I have some really good videos I can send you. Also, I just wanted to say that my parents have kind of started this Faith Life Logos courseware group, where if you want to join, you can, for an annual fee of either $75 for an individual or $150 for a household of 2 or more, you have access to like tons of courses that we've been learning this amazing stuff from. It's kind of, there's also like a Christian